So when I finished university, I went and got my CELTA because I knew I was moving to Europe to be with my boyfriend, who's now my husband. So that was a good decision, thankfully. It could have gone really wrong, right? But I took the risk, it paid off. And so I came to Denmark, started a translation company, did that for a few years. Then when we went to Singapore, I was hired by a language school or a language training company, I guess you would call it, to start doing in-house training with corporate clients. So at first I was teaching Singapore Airlines pilots how to make better public announcements, how to pronounce clearly and speak clearly over the PA system in the plane. And I was working one-on-one with some of their really top level corporate people. And many of you could be doing something very similar where you're working with company clients, but through a language school or a training firm. And that's what I was doing. And I did that for about 9 months until I figured out that, wait a second here, I'm doing everything. I'm doing the pre-assessment, I'm doing the course planning and development, I'm designing the program, and then I'm doing all of the teaching. And then at the end, I do the final evaluation, I do all the follow-up. The only thing I wasn't doing was finding the client. And yet I was only getting paid maybe, if I'm lucky, very lucky, I might have been paid about 30% of what the company was actually charging the client. And once I figured out the game that was being played there, I thought, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense at all. And that's when I decided I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to do this myself because I'm the one doing all the work for 30% of the pay, and I'm going to turn that around. And so that's why I started my company. It was not designed to be a language school, but was designed to be a corporate training firm, like I said. Let me see some of these other titles you guys are telling me. Teacher, teacher, English language teacher, teacher at English courses, university teacher of English tutor, teacher trainer, freelance teacher. Okay. Good, 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 good. So lots of teachers. That's good. And so what I want to talk to you about today is kind of the difference between being a teacher, which is what all of you are describing yourselves as, and instead becoming a trusted partner of a global company. So becoming a consultant, becoming an advisor, becoming a speaker or a trainer instead of wearing the teacher hat. Now, why is this important? Because for some reason, teachers are not respected. Even if they are respected, they are not paid a respectable wage. So when I'm talking today about building a sustainable business, what I really mean is a business that will earn you money, real money that you can live off of. I know way too many teachers who are living paycheck to paycheck, who are barely making it, who are struggling constantly. When I first joined IATEFL, many of you are probably members of IATEFL in Europe, and I went to the first annual convention conference. And it was almost like a badge of honor that the teachers wore. It's like a way that we define ourselves that, well, we're teachers, we make no money. None of us have any money because we're teachers. It's typical. Of course, no, we want a cheap restaurant for lunch because we're teachers. None of us have any money. And I feel like that's just not fair. I mean, why aren't we making more money? Why don't we have successful businesses? Why are we having so much trouble earning a decent living when many of us have master's degrees or higher, very well educated, massive amounts of experience, and yet you're fighting for a decent wage? And this just doesn't seem right to me. And that was after the first time I went to one of these IATEFL conferences. That's when I said, I need to start talking about this. I need to start opening teachers' eyes to other options and possibilities in the training industry, because as teachers, you probably don't know a lot about the business side or what exists out there or how the language schools are operating and what's really happening behind the scenes. So I'm going to tell you a bit about that today, and I'm going to share 8 steps with you for how you can start to build a really great business, global business, right where you are. Okay, great. So the typical English teacher, when we talk about an English teacher business, what I normally get are a lot of the answers I'm getting here. You're a tutor, you're a freelancer, or you're maybe tutoring online, you're doing online training. And so it looks a bit like this, a freelancer who's working through language schools, and the language school is providing you with your work. So the language school finds the clients, and then they pair you with a client. They say, we want you to teach this person or this class or this group. And then you say, okay, and you do it. And maybe they're providing books. Maybe you have to develop the whole course. Maybe you have your own materials you bring in. But in the end, the language school owns the content, and they own the programs, and they're the ones selling you and the program to the client directly. The online teacher is working maybe more independently, where you're out there in the world and you're getting your own clients, but they're usually individuals. You might be approaching companies, but the majority of teachers that I know and have spoken to usually are not going directly to companies, but are going through language schools. If you'd like to just let me know in the comments, do you actually go directly to clients, or do you have a school that is providing the clients? If you want to type that in for me, you can either write school or independent, if that makes sense. Independent if you go directly to the clients, or write direct for if you go direct to the client, or school if you're going through a school that is giving you clients. Yeah, independent, both. Okay. And that's good too if you, especially if you're trying to ensure that you have a certain base income. It is nice to maybe balance having a school that you know is bringing in some income for you every month, and then you can also be working independently, as long as your contracts and things are allowing for that. Both. Okay, so we have a few boths. Good. Because the main problem that I see with this style of business, of freelancing or just working online, is that in both of these situations, you're trading hours for money. So you are simply, I get this much money for this many hours of work. Every hour I get paid this much. And no matter what you do, there's going to be a ceiling, because there are only so many hours in a day. There's no way to leverage your income or leverage your time, because you're getting paid X dollars per hour, and you can only teach so many hours. So no matter what, you hit a ceiling. Even if you wanted to work 24 hours a day, you still hit a ceiling. You have a maximum amount you can earn, and you can earn nothing more than that. And that's a bit of a problem. The other problem I see is that they are neither sustainable or secure, and they have a limited growth potential. So what I mean here is that they aren't necessarily stable, especially if you're working through schools, because maybe one month they have a lot of work for you and another month they have nothing. Maybe they have a summer where they basically shut down and you're on your own. What do you do to pay the bills in those months? And how do you stretch the little amount that you're earning from the school for the months where there's nothing coming in? And so these are really serious issues that you can be running into working as a freelancer through other people, or even if you're just kind of going individually to clients. School bringing in clients. Okay, both freelance teacher, good. All right. So what I want to talk about today is how you can shift from thinking of yourself as a teacher to becoming a consultant or a coach or a trainer or a speaker or a combination of all of these. Now, I focus primarily on the corporate market because that's where I know you can earn by far the most money, first of all, but also you can be the most global, you can build the most sustainable and secure business by developing corporate relationships. They're really, really big paydays that come in all the time. And you have to operate with a high level of professionalism and in a way that is truly business. It's not sole proprietor playing on the internet, online tutoring. Not that any of that is bad, but it has a certain degree and level of professionalism involved when you're running this kind of business versus an online tutoring, for example. Now, along with the corporate side, I personally, in my business, and I'll be talking about this for you as well, I think it's really great if you can balance online programs as well as corporate in-house training. And it's very possible, there could be a lot of you on the call who's like, well, I don't want to work corporate, I work with kids, and that's fine too. We're going to talk about all different kinds of marketing and different things you can do to try to make your, whatever you're doing right now, more sustainable. Okay, so that's where we're going today. But looking specifically at how you are branding yourself and how you are presenting yourself to the world. If you want to run a business, then you need to speak business. And for a lot of teachers who come from a teaching background, you may have never had a real business job, right? I mean, you might not have ever worked in finance or accounting or marketing or communications. Maybe some of you have, but it's very possible many of you have not. And when we come from just a simple language background and a teaching background, we don't learn the ins and outs of business. We don't realize that a whole entire different language is spoken in the corporations and among adult professionals. So when we're going out in the world to sell our services, instead of calling ourselves an English teacher, what I'd like to challenge all of you to do is to become more comfortable with the concept of calling yourself a consultant or a specialist or an expert, a director and owner of your company, a CEO, a coach. All of these terms, you know what, I always joke about this, but unfortunately it's very, very true. The difference between an English teacher and an English specialist or an English consultant is basically about 10 times the pay. So the English teacher could be earning $20 an hour. The consultant is earning much more than $200 an hour. And sometimes it is as simple as changing the title. I have a very good friend who is also an English teacher, and she specializes in business writing and academic writing, and actually much more focused on academic writing, which you would think would be an even tougher market because you expect the businesses to pay a lot of money. You might not expect the universities to pay as much. But she was talking to me about her business, and she was struggling, and she was working through with, you know, freelancing through schools, and they were paying her nothing. And I said to her, I said, you know, why aren't you just doing this yourself? Like, you're an expert in this. You know, you've done years and years of just really focused academic writing programs. You know, why aren't, and you've developed your own programs, you have your own materials. Why aren't you giving yourself some more credit? Why aren't you calling yourself a business community or an academic communication or academic writing specialist? And so basically she went on LinkedIn, changed all her titles. I'm trying to remember exactly. I think she said academic writing consultant is what she chose, academic writing consultant. And just that change, she was able to double what she was earning through the schools by going directly. Now, I would say that you should multiply it even more than that, because remember, you're probably only getting a third of what the school is charging. So I always think it's funny when people go out on their own and then they say, oh, well, I can charge you less than what the school is charging. Why would you do that? Why aren't you charging more than what the school charges? Because now it's you, the expert, that they're coming to because they want something special, not something out of a box from a school. So you on your own has a lot more value than going through the school. But I'm getting off track. I'll come back to that. Let's look at the teacher speak versus business speak, okay? So we have this English teacher versus the consultant, specialist, expert, director, blah, blah, blah. Materials developer, we're going to call that, you're an author, you're a writer. Author if you have a published book. If you don't have any books yet, you're a writer, okay? You're not a materials developer necessarily. In the classroom, we don't necessarily work in classrooms anymore. We're working in virtual classrooms possibly, but otherwise you could be in a meeting room, in a seminar room, in a ballroom of a hotel. I've run many, many programs in hotel ballrooms for companies with, you know, big circular tables all over. And that's my classroom. It's not the typical rows of students classroom anymore because I'm doing training, okay? It could be an auditorium where you're speaking. So all of these types of terms and terminology, you need to start getting used to changing the terminology to be a business owner working in the business world. Students, I never refer to students as students. I refer to them as clients or as participants in my programs because they are my clients. Lessons are now sessions or programs, especially when I'm working with adults, which I only work with adults now. I don't work with kids. I have 2 kids of my own, love them. It stops there. Everybody kind of knows that. So I work with adults, they're my clients or they're a participant in my program. I find it a little bit condescending to meet with the CFO of a multinational company and call him my student. It gives a power dynamic that I don't think is appropriate in the business world. Lessons, yeah, sessions and programs, salary, those are fees, right? I'm not earning a salary, I'm charging fees. And in fact, when I write a proposal, I'll never write fees, I'll write investment because these people are investing in themselves or investing in the people who work for them, okay? It's an investment in learning and development. It's not a price they have to pay or a fee that they have to pay. You may be getting a payslip now. Now you'll be sending out invoices. So that's an important change in terminology. And a curriculum. For me, curriculum just doesn't even exist anymore. Now I send out program outlines or overviews. Sometimes they'll ask for an agenda, but they get a very broad agenda. Be very careful how much information you send out about your programs. It happened to me once where a company asked me to put together a very detailed program. And they said, yeah, well, we'd like to see that in the proposal. Like, can you give us an outline of the program with a full agenda? You know, what will you do at these times and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it was very detailed. And basically, what did they do? They took that perfect program outline and agenda, and they passed it to someone in HR in their company and had them run it, right? I mean, they could easily find material to support the topics I was planning to cover. And then they had the timing and everything ready for them. All they had to do was fill in the blanks. And that's not hard to do. So be very careful how much you share. After that experience, I said, nope, no more. If they ask for a detailed agenda, I say, no, these are the highlights of the program. This is what we'll cover. And that's as much as they can get. No more information than that, unless they've signed the contract and it's a done deal. Okay, and please, you guys, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the box as we go. I'll try to be kind of monitoring and watching what's coming up on my side. If nothing comes through, I'll leave some time at the end as well, but feel free to just bring up questions as we go and I can go a little bit deeper for you. So step one, if you want to get out there in the business world and start doing business with companies especially, then you need to know the terminology that's being used in the business world, inside of HR departments, human resources departments, and you need to present yourself as a business person and not as a teacher. Because as I said, for some reason in our world, it doesn't matter if you're an English teacher, a science teacher, a math teacher, teachers generally throughout the world are not paid what they should earn, and they don't gain the same respect as a business consultant who could be a 24-year-old right out of university walking in as a business consultant and earning hundreds of dollars an hour working for a company like McKinsey. And that to me seems crazy when you know we're sitting here well educated, huge amounts of experience. But a big part of the problem is that teachers don't understand and have the background to know how the business world is working. So step number two in building your business is getting comfortable with money. Talking about money. And, you know, I get into a lot of trouble on these webinars and when I've spoken at the conferences and talked about building businesses, and even when I run my own webinars, where I get a lot of pushback from people, especially teachers, who say, but I'm not in it for the money. And, you know, I do it because I love it and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, great. That's wonderful. And I don't think any of us are in this for the money because none of us ever thought there was any money to earn. And the majority of us still don't know that there's money in this industry. So there's only the few of us who have found a different way around that are earning really good money, six-figure companies per year in US dollar, whereas many are struggling, and consider themselves martyrs, you know, like, you know, woe is me, you know, I'm just a lowly teacher and, you know, teachers don't earn anything. It doesn't have to be like that, okay? So to talk to me about building business, you have to get really comfortable really fast with money, with talking about money. And teachers generally don't want to talk about that. Now, there was a massive exception when I was speaking at the Trendy conference at the evening event, where I said at the beginning, is it okay I talk about money? And everybody was like, yes, please talk about money, especially if it's not our money. So maybe in Russia it's somewhat different, that it's totally okay to be getting into the nitty-gritty details. And anyone who has heard me speak, I am very open about the money details. So you can also feel free to ask questions around that. But this is the reality of what's going on with money, okay? Companies, multinational companies, local companies have a training and development budget. For a lot of the large multinational companies, that training and development budget is going to be 1 to 3% of an employee's salary. This is why I tend to work with people at the very top of companies, because their training and development budget is huge. So if you're going into work one-on-one and you want to be able to make a very decent hourly wage, if you're working one-on-one, you need to be working with the very top levels of multinational companies. If you would prefer to be working with lower level staff, for example, I know people who specialize in working with receptionists, secretaries, and PAs. And they are a lower level, they're going to have a lower salary. And so their training and development budget is smaller. But what do you do there? Well, then you develop group programs that are basically created for all of the receptionists and secretaries and personal assistants to all the executives for the company. And in a large multinational, there could easily be 50 people who fall into that category. Then you can go in and run 1-2 day programs. You could run a 12-week course. You could run a full English course if you wanted to with that group of people. But then the per person payment is smaller, but the group, as a group, you could actually earn a significant amount of money running that kind of course. When I say significant amount of money, and like I said, I'm very honest about this, and also because we're kind of a private closed group here, my current day rate, if you were to hire me for a 1-day program in a multinational company, it doesn't matter where it is in the world, if it's in Indonesia, or if it's in China, or if it is in Korea, or Singapore, or Denmark, or Holland, or Russia, or wherever it is, my starting day rate is 5,000 US dollars a day. That's running a 1-day program called Get to Grips with Grammar, or Powerful People Skills, or Present with Confidence. That's a 2-day program. Speak Up Successfully, all about speaking clearly, correctly, confidently. It's dealing with pronunciation, it's dealing with grammar points. But when we're in the training and development sphere and we're working globally, those are the kinds of rates that are quite normal, okay? I know that I'm on the slightly higher side. I would say that the average is around 3,000 US a day for training and development programs. So if you were going to do this program for receptionists and secretaries, and you're going to bring in, let's say they have 50 in the company, so you're going to break them into 2 groups of 25. Normally a full day program is about 25. You could easily price that program at, if you're just starting out and you don't have the confidence yet, or you don't believe me that you could ever get 5,000 a day, and no, but Heather, this is Russia and everything is different. I hear that from every single person I talk to everywhere in the world. Think about Indonesia. I charge the same in Indonesia. I've gotten the same pricing, practically a third world country. So don't tell me it can't be done. It can. Multinational companies have this, generally the same policies everywhere in the world. So it can definitely be done. But I totally understand if people don't have the mindset yet or the understanding to realize that it can be done. So start small. Go in and charge 2,500 for a day. Go in and charge 1,500 if you want to, but know that you're way under market. Okay. And believe me, those of us who are professionals in the training and development industry, we get quite angry when people come in charging 1,500, 2,500 a day because they're really undercutting us. And then our only response is, well, you get what you pay for, because that usually is a sign that it's someone who's quite inexperienced or doesn't have the business knowledge to know how to play the game. And so, for example, I've spoken with HR professionals who have told me, well, yeah, Heather, we did have, we had a proposal in for, maybe 2,000 a day. So actually you're over double the price of this other person, but we know that that person can't be very professional if they're charging that. So sometimes they'll even look at proposals and say, what, why is it so cheap? That's got to be like major discount pricing. They don't know what they're doing. They're unprofessional. So sometimes you can go in too low if you don't know the real market value of your service. Okay, so hopefully, yes, I remember you did. I assume that means talking about my pricing and things. Yeah, so feel free to put your reactions to what I'm saying in the chat box. I'm happy to kind of go back and forth with you guys. But the real difference here is realizing your value, realizing what you're worth, and not charging based on the hour. Because you say, gosh, Heather, $5,000 a day, that's insane. That you're earning like $700 an hour, or I don't know how much, yeah, like $700 an hour for a 7-hour program. Yeah, well, what am I charging for? Am I charging for the 1 hour I'm standing there delivering the program? No, I'm charging for the $100,000 private education. Luckily, I was on scholarship. But I mean, my American education that costs over 100 grand. I'm charging for my master's studies. I'm charging for my 15 years of experience in the field. I'm charging for my expertise. I'm charging for, you know, all of that that I've developed, my own materials, my own program. It's my brain that I'm charging for. I'm not charging for 1 hour. I'm charging for what you as a company, the value that you are receiving by learning and applying the skills that I'm teaching you. Remember that you don't teach English. You are teaching people how to communicate within their organization. You're helping them to work together better as a team. You're helping them to reduce misunderstandings, which can be incredibly costly. Think how much money they waste on time that is used, people writing emails that get misunderstood and emails going back and forth and back and forth. Think of how much money they waste on that. When you think of how much money a massive company brings in versus the $5,000 they pay you for one day to train 25 people in their company, wow. When you look at it that way, it's like, geez, I'm cheap, right? I mean, I'm charging you nothing compared to the return on investment that you're receiving by learning this information. So when you become a business owner and start playing the game of business, your entire mindset has to change. This hit me like a brick because I was earning actually what I know now was a very, very good hourly wage. At the time, I didn't know it was so good, but now that I've started working with so many teachers and heard what they're earning, which could be as low as $5 an hour. Sorry, I'm keeping everything in US dollars simply because it's the most universal. I do usually charge US dollars internationally because I find US dollars is kind of seen as a global company versus if I charged euro, it's seen as a European company. If I charge pounds, it's seen as a British company. So I use dollars because it's used all over the world. It's used in the Middle East, it's used out in Asia. For some reason, it's been adopted as more of a global currency. So, oh, I lost my train of thought. That was a sidetrack. Where was I going to go with that? We were talking about the day rate. Somebody can type in where I was there. Oh, it hit me like a brick, right? That's what it was. Because I was earning about 40 US an hour when I worked through the language school, working one-on-one with the CFOs and CEOs, really high-level people. And then they were paying me about $300, if I remember correctly, 300 or less a day to teach those pilots. Remember, I told you I was working with the pilots. So they were teaching me, they were paying $300 a day. Then I met some people in the training industry, some trainers and coaches. One of them in particular, Shirley Taylor, one of my closest friends in the world, still based in Singapore, she focuses on business writing. Well, I focus on speaking. So we were a great pair. And she said, Heather, I have clients that could use you because I do the writing, but I don't want to do the speaking stuff. So she passed me a client. It was Citibank, in Malaysia, just over the border from Singapore in Johor Bahru. Very low income area of Malaysia, not Kuala Lumpur, not big city, but still, this is a multinational company. And she had asked me, so what are you charging per day? And I said, well, I'm earning, 300 a day from this company, which I thought was really good because I taught twice a week. I was earning about 2,500 a month from this company. And I thought, wow, that's more than what most people are making full time. And she said, no, 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 no. She goes, no way. She goes, I'm not sending you to my client unless you charge at least $3,000 a day. And I was like, what? Like, what? Are you crazy? From you're telling me I should charge 10 times? What, can I just charge him 500 a day? I was shaking with nervousness. I thought, that's absolutely insane. How could I possibly go in and charge 3,000 a day? But she wasn't even willing to offer me her client. So I went in and I told them about the course and I explained everything. And when it got to pricing, they said, how much? And I said, 3,000 a day. I'm sure I didn't sound very convincing. And they took it. And not only did they take it, they wanted to add on multiple days. I think they signed on for 3 or 5 days of training. And I can remember calling Shirley on the way home from Malaysia going, oh my God, they did it, they did it. And so this is kind of the situation many of you are sitting in where you have really no idea at this point that this world exists, that companies have actually placed huge percentages of all their employees' salaries into this training and development budget, and they need to use that budget every year. They have to use it, or they can't get it the next year, okay? So what you need to do now is stop thinking in terms of hours, because you're not charging by the hour. Your time isn't all that you're charging for. You're not just getting paid for an hour of your time. You're getting paid for your entire life experience, your entire education. That's what they're paying you for, the value of that, and the value that you bring to the company, the value that that individual that you're teaching is going to add to the company after they work with you. And that is a completely different mindset than, oh, I charge $20 an hour. Completely different mindset. So we're going to sell value and not hours. You need to get comfortable with the big numbers, 10 times more than what you're used to, 20 times more than what you're used to. Start getting used to and getting comfortable with those kinds of numbers if you want to play up here with the big boys in the big companies and the big girls. And then another thing you might think about is add-ons. So what can you add on? How can you package what you do so that it's not just teaching, but maybe there's also an online element. Maybe you have extra materials you've developed. Maybe you have a set of articles that you'll supplement with. Maybe you're willing to offer some kind of mastermind when they have 3 or 4 different individuals you're working with, that maybe once a month you bring them together and then you kind of brainstorm and work together. There's all different things you can do if you get creative and start thinking and start really talking to others in the industry about what they're doing. And don't only talk to English teachers. Go and look at what management consultants are doing. What are leadership consultants doing? What are executive coaches doing? How are they structuring their business? Because that's how you should be structuring yours. And believe me, there are so few English teachers who think about going in this direction that there's very little competition in this space, because the companies are looking at language schools, but you come in as a consultant or an expert that can offer very high level specialized knowledge in some certain area of English communication. And that makes a complete difference, okay? So as I said about add-ons, also thinking about packaging what you're doing, okay? Really important. So these are all different ways for you to start thinking about pricing in a very different way, okay? But really the point is getting comfortable with money. I see a question here. Do you mean that you charge for a day but work only a few hours a day, or do you teach the whole day? When I run a single day program, for example, Get to Grips with Grammar, that's one of the programs I run, it's a 1-day seminar. So the company can send in up to 25 people, and it starts maybe 9 a.m., ends at 5 p.m. There's an hour break for lunch. There's a 20-minute break in the morning, a 20-minute break in the afternoon. So that's my day fee, and that's what I charge for a day. If they wanted a half-day program, that might be a 3 to 4 hour max program, and that's going to be around $3,000 for a half day. If they wanted me just for a keynote presentation, those are also usually going to start around $3,000, because you have to think about it. If you get booked for a half day or even for 1 hour, most likely you're going to have no more income for that day. So you've lost your day rate. I can't book another company in for that day if I'm doing a 1 hour keynote for a massive conference somewhere. So that's why, although, again, you can't be thinking about it as hours, because the value I am giving to a room full of 1,500 people in a keynote presentation is going to be just as much, if not more, than the value I give 25 people for a full day, where we maybe go into some other details and dig deeper. So remember, we're looking at value. Now, my keynote rates, I'll be very honest, are quite low. If you wanted to work and have an agent representing you, if you wanted to be a professional speaker doing keynote speeches all over the world, you can't even get representation if you aren't charging at least $3,000 to $5,000 US per speech. They won't even represent you. And again, you're saying, oh, but this is Russia. It doesn't happen in Russia. I know personally one of the largest speaker agency owners in Russia. He brought in Tony Robbins last year, who's the biggest motivational speaker in the world, and he's working with the same numbers. Working with the same numbers. When you're in the global circuit, it's all run the same way. But it depends on if you're ready, willing, have the confidence and the guts, really, to just walk in there and say, I'm here, let's do it. And a lot of teachers, because we were not raised that way, we've never thought that way, it's usually the mindset that's holding us back more than anything else, because you have the speaking skills, you're in front of people all day, every day. You know how to teach. In some cases, you can be a much better speaker and educator, where you can actually create a lot more change than what the typical management consultant can do, or the professional speaker, motivational speaker, because you actually have the academic and educational background to know how to use certain teaching methodologies that create massive change that a lot of consultants simply don't have. So the point of the story here is, and this is going to come up through the entire webinar, is really understand your value. Understand that you are worth so much more than you think, and that you can work in a way that is so different than the way you're working right now, and can be competing at a completely different level if you choose to take that step. Okay, so I'll leave it there. Hopefully that answered your question. All right, step 3 out of 8. I'm also kind of watching the time here. I could talk about this all day, every day, and I'll give you some resources at the end where you can maybe learn a bit more as well. So developing your niche. If you're going to break out on your own, this is probably the #1 most important thing that you need to do, is to develop a niche. So if you go out there in the world and you say, I'm an English teacher. Okay, great. You're an English teacher. Let's say that you're at a dinner party and you are mingling with people and they say, so what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm an English teacher. Oh, okay, cool. And that's about the end of the story, right? That's the end of the conversation. Everybody knows what an English teacher does. All the English teachers are the same. They all do the same thing. They teach English. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing unique. You're an English teacher. Okay, maybe you are a little more specific and you say, I teach adults, or I teach children, or I teach in this particular school, or I teach this area of English. But if you want to go out on your own, simply walking out in the world and saying, I'm an English teacher, isn't good enough. Having on your LinkedIn profile, freelance English teacher, you're a dime a dozen. There are millions of you all over the world. And if the only thing that you're offering is English teaching, well, what makes you different than the next teacher? Why should I pay you good money when I can get this one for $5 an hour? I mean, there's no difference, is there? Well, we all know as teachers, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between English teachers, between the native speaker who shows up in China and thinks that they can teach English because they grew up speaking it. We know that that teacher is worthless, as opposed to the real teachers who have master's degrees, or even, you don't even need a master's, but if you have the teaching experience, the teaching credential, and you actually know how to teach the language. Many of you, or all of you probably, if you're from Russia, you speak English as a second language, and that makes you, in my opinion, even better placed as a teacher, because you understand how to learn the language and you know what works and what doesn't. A native speaker, we never had to go through the process of learning the language. So for us teaching, we don't have the same understanding that you do. So I think that's a massive benefit. And I know that there's, huge native, non-native debates around this as teachers, the non-native teacher versus the native teacher. And I'm definitely on your side. I think you have massive advantages. I think one of the biggest problems is that there aren't enough non-native speaking teachers who have been able to bring that into their brand and get really big with it and really sell it, because it is a massive advantage. But I don't see enough people expressing it in a way that sells, and it can absolutely be done. I'm 100% sure of that. But getting back to the niche, how do you develop your niche? How do you decide on your niche? This is basically the way I break it down. You look at what you're really good at, you look at what people need, you look at what they're willing to pay for, and what you love doing. And when all of those things come together, there's this little teeny sweet spot in the middle, which is your niche, okay? And that's the little area, that little teeny box. That's going to be your focus. And you are going to dig a mile deep into that niche and into that focus. And you're going to be the go-to person, the expert in that niche. When I started my company, and I think this happens to everybody, you're really scared you're not going to get clients, and you think, I need to be really broad. I need to offer everything, because then anybody who comes, I can offer them something, and then I can get money, and I can survive, and I can keep my business going. And we think that by doing that, we're going to be super, super successful because, well, look at all these offerings that I have. You can learn this and 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 this. I think it's funny when I see consultants and professional speakers who say, well, I can do programs on time management and leadership and communication and HR and sales. And I'm going, how can you possibly teach all of those subjects? How could you possibly even know enough about all of those subjects to teach them? I would much rather, if I am a HR person in a company and I'm thinking, gosh, we really need to increase sales in our company. Am I going to go for some generalist who teaches motivation, leadership, communication, HR, English, and everything else, plus happens to teach sales? Or am I going to go for the best, top, number one sales trainer in my country or in the world that I'm going to bring in to teach my staff? I want the expert. I want someone who has dug their niche so deep that they know everything there is to know about that topic. And that's what you need to think about as an English teacher. English teacher, there's a million English teachers. If I am top level in a company, if I am, think about people, think about a CEO who's earning over $1 million a year. Do you think he wants a $5 an hour English teacher, just general English teacher, to help him in preparing for his very important presentations, his multi-million-dollar deals in the company? Absolutely not. He wants the best, okay? These are the type of people that you want to be targeting if you want to really go for the top level and the serious income in your business. It doesn't have to be that way. Like I said, you can always go for lower levels as well by structuring the programs a little bit differently. But if we're looking at one-on-one, the higher you go, the more specific and specialized these people are looking for to solve their needs. So think about, what is it that you really love doing? I don't think there's any English teacher who loves every single aspect of the English teaching job. There isn't anyone who's like, ooh, I just love test prep, or I just love, the speaking section, and I love the writing, and I love the grammar, and I love, we all have our favorite part of the lesson. So think about, what's your favorite part of the lesson? For me, it was always the speaking section. I love the pronunciation stuff. I love the speaking practice and the conversational skills. For me, my favorite thing in the world, and I could do it all day, every day. The grammar, the writing, the email writing, the even vocabulary drills, all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, I don't want to deal with that. I don't enjoy it. And there are other teachers out there who are so much better at it than me. Right? You have to be able to admit that there are certain things you do really, really well, and there are other things that you're just not very good at. And focus on the stuff you're good at. Focus on the stuff that I remember I had a Danish teacher who was amazing with Danish grammar. Like, I have never met a teacher, English teacher or any other language, who had such a good grasp on the grammar and was so good at explaining it. And there are some teachers who are just gifted with grammar. If that's you, focus on that, okay? For other people, maybe you have a background, maybe you do have an old corporate job, maybe you were a lawyer. A lot of lawyers, surprisingly, come to English. Actually, it's not surprising because lawyers are very focused on language. So it's not that far of a jump to then want to move into communication and language as a profession. So if you have a legal background, for example, then maybe you want to run courses specifically for lawyers on legal vocabulary. Or maybe you want to run courses specifically on legal writing. But this is your niche. And the more narrow you can make it, the better. And I know you'll be scared at first because you'll think, oh, but I could do an email writing class. I don't love it, but I could do that. If somebody comes to me and wants that, I'll do it. Yeah, but think about how much time and effort and energy you're going to put into creating that course that is not in your niche, that is not in your focus area, and that you'll probably never use again. If you begin your company by being very niche focused, you are only developing content and programs within that niche. You are researching within that niche. You're reading everything you can get your hands on within that niche. And therefore, when people come to you, they come to you for that. They start to see you as the expert in that one area. They know, when I was in Singapore and I was there for 8 years, I had my company for 7 of the 8 years. By the time I left, and even now as I'm going back, I am still known that if you want pronunciation, you go to Heather Hansen. Everybody knows that in Singapore. I basically own that market because there is nobody else who has gone so niche. So yeah, they can come to me and say, oh, but Heather, you're so expensive. I say, fine, go to British Council. You can go ahead and do that. And I'll see you in 6 months, because half of my clients go to these out of the box training programs. They don't get what they need. And then they come to me for specialized help after. If you're looking for something specialized, something expert level, you come to me. If you just need a general course, then you go to these other people. So that is how you want to build your brand. You want people to know that academic writing, this person, legal writing, this person, public speaking, this person. You want to be that one person who owns that niche. But if you can't figure out what your niche is, you're still just going to be the general English teacher. And nobody remembers the general English teacher. Nobody asks you, going back to I think I got off of it, going back to the dinner party where they say, what do you do? I'm an English teacher. And it's like, okay, cool, whatever. But when I go to a dinner party, they say, oh, so Heather, what do you do? And I say, oh, well, I help top level executives, top global leaders speak clearly and confidently in English. And then they go, huh, really? How do you do that? I said, well, I run courses, I work one-on-one, I do seminars, I speak, I've actually written a couple books all about, how to speak in a way that everyone can understand globally. Because, top professionals, we're on conference calls, we're on video conferences. They really need this in their sales and everything. It starts a conversation. And then when you start giving examples, they go, huh, I know someone who could use that. They weren't looking for an English teacher. They were looking for someone who could help them with their high-level English communication skills, which technically I think an English teacher is the best to teach that. And that's what they're looking for. But they would have never thought to ask an English teacher for that help. They didn't realize an English teacher could help them. Okay, so it's a very different way of thinking, a very different way of presenting yourself, a very different way of selling your services, and even deciding what kind of services you're selling. Now, you could be sitting here saying, yeah, but Heather, I love everything about teaching English. I'm a generalist. I love all of it. Okay, then there's a different way that you can build your niche. Perhaps your niche is in a specific industry. So you are the top #1 English communication specialist in the automotive industry because, well, you worked in the automotive industry for 15 years or whatever. And so everyone in the automotive industry, if it's Toyota, if it's Mitsubishi, if it's Mercedes, Audi, it doesn't matter what it is, all of these companies know you're the person to go to if anybody in the automotive industry is looking for English language programs for their staff. Okay, so now you're niche because of the industry. So you go to all the automotive conferences, trade shows, you're networking with them, you're in their associations. That's your niche. Okay, does that make sense? That's the way you can niche if you don't have a specific area. For me, it's pronunciation and speaking skills. That is me. That's what I'm known for. And even more niche than that, it is very specifically in the area of English as a lingua franca. So I am not interested at all in working with people who are living in America or living in the UK or living in Australia. I'm not interested in teaching pronunciation to fit a model so that they can be socially accepted within a native speaking environment. That's not why I do what I do. I am working very specifically with top level leaders who are living and working in international environments and using the English language. And they could be both native speakers and non-native that I work with because I'm teaching them how to use the language to communicate globally. Okay, so can you see how I've really narrowed down that niche? It wasn't always like that. When I started, I said my slogan was speak clearly, correctly, considerately, and confidently. And so speak clearly was pronunciation stuff. Speak correctly was just total general English language teaching, nothing special, just out of the books English teaching. Clearly, correctly, considerately was people skills stuff, which is also just general workplace communication. And then finally, confidently was public speaking skills. So the correctly part has completely been lost. In fact, I dropped it within the first year because very quickly people started seeing me for my niche ability, which was the speaking, public speaking and pronunciation. Those were the things they wanted from me. The interpersonal skills is kind of still just a sideline thing for me. I still offer it because I've written the book, Powerful People Skills. So that's still a program that I get asked to do, primarily actually in the Middle East and Africa, but which is kind of funny. I don't know why now that I think about it, but really I'm known for the pronunciation and speaking. So what are you going to be known for? Start to put into the box if you have any idea what your niche could be, or if you already have one. I'd like to hear if any of you can kind of pinpoint either a niche you have right now or one that you would like to develop. So thinking about what are you really good at? What do you enjoy doing the most, love doing? What do people need from you? What will they actually pay for? So let me know what you think. Because as you finally get that and you know your niche, that's how you are then going to start deciding who are your ideal clients? Where can you find them? And and that's really important because otherwise you are going to waste all of your time and energy um, just trying to get any client, where you don't want any client, you want a very specific client. As I've made very clear to you, you can hear I have a very specific client in mind when I'm working. They're corporate, they're in the top 2, max 3 levels of the company. We're talking CEO, managing director, director, vice president, president. These are the titles of the people I work with: CFO, CEO, CIO, all the C's. You know, those are the people I work with. If somebody comes to me off the street, they I'll still work with them, but it may not be in a one-to-one top level program. I might say, oh, you know what, my online program would be really good for you because it'll fit their budget. They can't afford what I do with the companies. And they can be part of a group. They can get support that way. I don't see any niches, you guys. Type. Get those fingers busy. Let me know. Victoria is typing. Yay, Victoria. Let me know what you think your niche could be. I'm just wondering. If you have no idea, just say no idea. That's fine too. You know, we're just starting here, so you might need more time to develop a niche. Early childhood teacher. Okay. In a school, Victoria. Early childhood teacher. So we're talking like primary level courses, early childhood teacher courses. So are you teaching the teachers or the kids? Kids. Okay. Okay. So you are looking very specifically at teaching courses for children, early childhood. Okay. So then it depends on how you're going to market that, because there is money to be made there as well. If you're simply hired into a normal, typical primary school or a language school tuition center, the pay isn't necessarily going to be there. You have the option of starting your own tuition center if you wanted, or you have the option of running private courses. Now, what's interesting here, people think that, oh, well, you can't make good money teaching children. Not true, because there are some very picky parents out there, and I know that this is true in Moscow and in Russia especially, is that we have some very worldly people and parents there who want their children to have English from a very young age. And they're going to be willing to pay top dollar for the very, very best teachers to teach those children. The children education market is massive. If you were to develop any kind of products, games, programs, online learning, all of these things could be put on autopilot and could bring in a very significant income. So even though I'm talking primarily about the corporate market because that's what I'm in, you can easily be applying a lot of what I'm talking about today to these other markets as well. If others would like to chime in with their niche, please feel free to, and I'm happy to kind of give you some guidance there as well. So once we've got the niche, we want to look at the ideal clients. And the best way to get ideal clients is, first of all, to figure out who they are and then know how to introduce yourself. So instead of saying, I'm an English teacher, this is where we get into the nuts and bolts of your unique selling point or unique selling proposition, where you actually say, I help you, your ideal client. That's why we need to know who that person is. Achieve what so that they can do what. So it's really important. The better you know the ideal client, the easier it is for you to explain what you do in a way that appeals to that ideal client. So if you just say, I'm an English teacher, well, that's so broad, you know? Let me see, actually, if I scroll back up. See, Victoria, when I asked, what do? You just wrote teacher, okay? Now I'm starting to understand, okay, early childhood teacher, we're getting closer, working with children. Okay, we're getting more and more niche, we're getting more specific here. So what we want to really get in our minds is, okay, who is that ideal client? So what kind of child, in what kind of schools, from what kind of family, from what are the parents' goals? Because it's not the child choosing the teacher, it's the parents. So really your client is the parents. So thinking about what the parents want for the children, why they want this teaching. What is the parent's pain point? Is it that they want to show off to their friends? Oh, look, my child speaks English. Do they want to ensure that their child gets into the right schools further on? Do they want them to have an international education? Are they setting up their children for a certain social class? You need to know so specifically what those parents are after that you can then word it in a way that appeals to them. So, like I said, when I'm introducing myself, I'm not saying I'm an English teacher or I'm a pronunciation teacher. I don't say that either. But I say I help top global leaders speak clearly and confidently in English. Or I might say I help them speak clearly and confidently in global settings. I usually use some variation of that. Now, the rest of this I have in brackets because it depends on who I'm talking to. And I may not use these words exactly, but I know that the pain point for my customers, my clients, the reason they come to me is because, one, they want respect at work. There are people who are not respecting them because they don't speak well. Two, they want to avoid embarrassment. So they're tired of people making fun of them. They're tired of being made fun of how they speak. They're tired of people laughing during the meeting because of a word they said wrong. All the jokes are getting old, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. And finally, they know that they have something to share. They know that they have something to contribute. They want to contribute, and they feel held back because they don't have the confidence to speak up in the meeting or to speak up to their boss or to say what they need to say to the board of directors. They just don't have the confidence. So I have those in parentheses because I may not say that directly. It may be a little bit too harsh or in their face, but that's something I'm focused on in the discussion with them, where I might just say, I know a lot of my clients, gosh, I have this one client, he came to me primarily because, he had to go and speak to the board of directors in the United States. And they all respected all the American people on the board, but none of them had any respect for him. And he felt that, and he knew it, and he was actually running the biggest financial section of the company. He had everything from India to Australia and everything in between. He was bringing more money in for the company than anybody sitting in America. And they had no respect for him, and when I tell stories like that, then they'll be like, gosh, yeah, that's me too, So you really need to know the client. You need to know who you're going for, and then know how to present yourself in a way that sells that. Okay, and this is a way to kind of begin that sales conversation with your ideal client. Step number 5: feel free to ask questions and things as we're moving through this. Become an expert. This has to do with your niche as well. So we're digging really, really deep. We're learning more and more and more about the subject, whatever your specific subject is. I mean, when I decided I was really going to go into the pronunciation field, I didn't just go back over what I learned at university. I went and basically read every single academic article that had been written on pronunciation of English as a lingua franca. Because that's specifically my niche. I've read everything on English as a lingua franca. I've read the books, I've read the articles, I've gotten the subscriptions to get the articles, all the academic articles. I've read the research, and through reading the research, I have discovered things that have not even trickled down to our textbooks. There are things that I teach that the textbooks that we get in English classes don't even include, and they're such simple, easy things that help my clients immediately, that they will never get from an English teacher because they simply don't know it. They haven't read the research. They haven't done the research. If you want to be running a sustainable business, earning top dollar for what you do, then you better be the best at what you do. And that means that you need to be an expert in your field. And not only becoming the expert, but also reminding people that you're an expert. Because it's great if you collect all this knowledge and you have all this experience, but if you don't tell people about it by writing articles, and they don't have to be academic articles. I'm talking about write an article on LinkedIn, write an article on your blog, submit an article to any magazines. Now, think about what kind of magazine you're submitting to. There's no point submitting to magazines in the English language teaching industry if you aren't focused on teaching teachers. So if you're that automotive industry expert, then you should be writing a column in whatever automotive industry magazine comes out every month for the largest thousands and thousands of people globally, right? So think about targeting publications that your ideal client is reading. And that's where you want to be. And you should be constantly producing. Now, this is why I like to run day seminars. This is why I've set up my business this way, where I'm doing seminars and training instead of ongoing daily teaching. And the reason I do that is because if you are working 100% of the time in a classroom, when are you going to market? When are you going to develop? When are you going to sell? When are you going to work on the business if all you are doing is working in the business? So if you're in the business doing the teaching 100% of the time, then you have no time to get new clients. You have no time to write proposals. You have no time to write articles and do marketing, do social media, go to networking events, go to industry fairs, go to trade shows. You can't do that if you're in the classroom 100% of the time. So think about when you're structuring your programs, how are you going to manage your time so that you can also manage your business? Some people fix this problem by bringing in associate trainers or selling off other teachers, basically becoming a language school, and hiring in associate teachers and basically running the same bad system that we've had to go through ourselves and think, oh, well, now I'm the boss and now I get to screw over the teacher the same way I was screwed over. I mean, that's not changing anything. So be creative about your financial packages, how you're helping the teachers, how you're paying the teachers, how you can split and partner with them in a way that you're splitting income or whatever you can do to maybe run things differently so that we don't just continue creating schools that are really underpaying the teachers. And that's one of the reasons I've never opened a school, because I felt like, I don't want to be a part of that. If I work with teachers, I want them to be earning minimum $100 an hour. I see that as an absolute minimum for any English teacher, especially if they have a master's degree. You should be earning minimum 100 US dollars an hour, nothing less. And if I ever bring on associate trainers, licensed trainers, there's no way I would sell them to a company for under that. And I would still be profiting on top of them. So you have to understand what you are earning as a teacher is the tiniest little percentage of what the schools are bringing in. The reason is it's not that they're evil people. They have huge overheads, right? They're paying for insurance. They're paying for all different things. And so I understand what's going on. But the problem is the language schools are competing based on price, because an English teacher is an English teacher. So they're all competing on price. Who's the cheapest language school? And then guess what? That means there's pennies left for the English teacher when all is said and done and the overhead is paid out. So that's why it's so important, if you have a company, that you have branded yourself and you have a specific niche and you are seen as the expert person or company for that specific niche, because that means that you can charge top dollar for what you offer. If you don't have that expert status, then you're the same as everybody else. So somehow, some way, you need to brand yourself and market yourself in a way that shows how you are different. And that's what also the unique selling point is trying to show, is how are you different from English teacher? And that's really important if you want to get deep into the business side and get really good clients who treat you well, who pay you well, and who value what you offer. Creating products and services. So this is, again, moving outside of teacher and classroom, getting creative, knowing that you have skills that you can use in different ways. Okay, yes, you're all teachers, but as teachers, you also have a million other talents and you have a lot of different ways that you can teach. So this is just a very small list of different products and services that you could be offering. Lunchtime talks. This you could easily be charging 1,000, 1,500 to go in and do a talk for maybe 45, 50 people. The company provides lunch. Maybe we call it sometimes like a brown bag lunch. It could be just a simple sandwich that they offer, whatever. But you go in maybe 45 minutes to 1 hour, 15 minutes usually, and you do a lunchtime talk. And it's over everybody's lunch break, so there's no complaints about, oh, well, it's taking away from work time or whatever. They get to sit there and eat. They're sitting there anyway, and you're sharing your knowledge. And this is a great foot in the door, especially with big companies. I do know people who will offer these for free. I'm at a stage where I usually will not offer them for free, but it is a good step into the company. And I would say if you're just starting out, go ahead and do it for free. It gets you in the door. But make sure then that you follow up, because it makes no sense to go and do a free talk and then leave and have no contact to the customer again. What you're doing is you're going in there because you want to build a relationship with the client. So you find out what their needs are, what their training budget is, what their training needs are moving forward. go and deliver a nice hour-long talk, workshop, little bit of interaction, not too much because they're eating. So keep that in mind, you know, if they're sitting there eating, how much can they really do? So it's usually more of a talk than a hands-on interactive workshop. And yeah, the whole idea there is then to follow up with HR, whoever your contact is, and say, so, you know, what was the feedback? What did they think? How can we now move this? Are there any people who could use more of this? Would you like to do a full day program? Would you like to do some individual coaching? So that's where you want to work and move towards. I've talked about the half day, full day workshops. You can have your one-on-one coaching. You could be doing that in person. You could be doing it online. You could have them come to you, or you could be going to them. Now, keep in mind that when you go out, I was trapped in this for a really long time, going out to all of my clients. Well, finally, one day I sat down and realized I could only, when I was working in Singapore anyway, because the traffic is so horrendous, even though it's a little teeny place, that you could easily spend 40 minutes going from one side to the other to meet with a client out here, and then you'd have maybe an hour session, and then you'd have to go to this other place. I think I figured out I could work with max 4 clients a day, and the rest of my time was spent in taxis and in traffic. And I thought, this is a total waste of my time. You know, why am I doing this? So I went to some of my business consultant friends, management consultant friends, and I said, what do you guys do? Don't you go out to the client? You know, if you're working one-on-one doing executive coaching, or, you know, goal setting or whatever, you know, working one-on-one with these top execs, don't you go out to them? And they were like, no, like they come to me, you know, they go to their doctor, they go to their lawyer, they go to their accountant. Why wouldn't they go to me? Well, how am I any different? And that was like a light bulb moment, right? Because I just kind of assumed, well, of course I should go to them, because when I worked in the language school, I always went to them, you know, and I'm being flexible, but they had a point. They're like, no, none of my clients, I don't go to any of my clients, because then I could only work with 3 or 4 a day. And I'm going, yeah, that's my problem, right? So you hit a ceiling of your income because you're wasting all of your time in travel. Well, one way I made up for that was that I added travel costs. So especially people who were located way farther out of the city, I would add a special fee on top for that kind of transport time. But or they could choose to come to me. That was how I transitioned, because it felt really uncomfortable for a while to get my mindset shifted to this idea of, I'm just like your doctor. If you need to see me, you come to me, you come to my office. And a lot of teachers as well don't have offices. So in the beginning, I was working from home. I didn't want people to come to my home. So of course I went out. But over time, I then went and got my own office. So then I thought, wait a second, yeah, I have an office that I pay for. Like, why aren't they coming to me? Why am I wasting all this money on transport when they could come to me? I have an office, right? So it depends on your position, where you are in your business, if you have an office, what your living conditions are. But just keep that in mind, that you could save money and increase your profit margin if you have people coming to you. Or you do it online. You sell them on the idea of, we can just do this in our own offices, you know. And what I've also found is that when I do online coaching, this is all side note here, when I do online training, I actually cut the time. So if it's face-to-face, it might be a full 1 hour session. When it's online, I do 45 minutes to 50 minutes. Because guess what? I get just as much done. It's funny, when we get face-to-face, we have all this small talk and, oh, let's get a coffee, and and then you wait on the secretary to bring the coffee, and then you kind of sit and chat, and, oh, how's your weekend, and how are the kids, and Guess what? You've wasted 10 minutes before you even get into the dirt of the lesson. So when I'm on Skype or I'm doing something virtually, for some reason this doesn't happen. We get online, we're good to go. Let's dig in. I have my coffee already. They have their coffee. We're done. We're done with all of that. Let's get working. And so I've actually cut my timing to 45 minutes. It's charged the same amount. We're still getting the same value, right? Even though it's not, I've cut 10 minutes. They're getting the same exact value as they would have gotten if I was sitting in there in their office. So if you're working globally and doing online coaching, consider this. It also gives you that 10-minute breather so that you're able to schedule clients on the hour. Instead of going a full hour and then having to take like a 10-15-minute break, maybe you lose a whole half an hour. You get 0 done during that time, and then you have to go in, no, 45 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, 15 minutes, just to quickly finish your notes on the last one, get out the paperwork for the new one, continue, okay? Think about how you schedule your time and block your time. That was totally off topic, just an extra tip for if you're teaching that way. Small group courses, blended learning, online options. books, materials, testing, assessments. That's a whole industry just on its own. I know of teachers who only teach test prep and make a fortune doing it. Very, very lucrative field. Licensing. Licensing is something I'm playing with now because I have a lot of teachers who would like to use my pronunciation materials, because there isn't a lot in this area of lingua franca, teaching English pronunciations in lingua franca. And it's especially good for non-native English speakers who don't have an RP accent. I don't either. And don't sound like the CDs that come with the textbooks. So my approach is very different. And I have a lot of teachers who want to license that, my content, to use with their students. So once you've worked up to a certain level, you can start having an entirely different stream of income when you start thinking as a business owner instead of a teacher. Training the trainer, that's part of the licensing as well, because you probably need to train the person to teach the program that you are licensing to them. But training the trainer, doing a lot of teacher training is also an option. Retainer agreements, this is another one that a lot of teachers have no idea about or aren't very aware of. I have been on retainer with a few different companies where they simply pay me a monthly check, right? It's a monthly salary, basically. And then they have a certain group of people who are allowed to use me. And I have kind of a set number of hours that they can have in that package. Maybe they also get access to my online courses that they can access at any time as a part of that retainer. But then they know that if they have an upcoming presentation, they can send their slides to me and say, Heather, could you check these? Or they can call me up and say, Heather, could you come down for an hour and work with me on my presentation? Or they can write me at any time and say, how do I pronounce this word? Or they can give me a call, right? So you're basically, as a retainer, you're kind of an on-call communications expert in the company that they can draw on when needed, if needed, for up to a reasonable amount of time each month. And simply having one client like that could pay your base salary, right? That could basically pay your bills. And then everything else you do on top is extra. So retainer agreements are excellent if you can, and it also shifts you from being seen as an English teacher in a company to being a very trusted advisor, where basically if anybody has a question on English language, anything, they say, call Heather, right? And they know that that's the agreement we have, and they can use me in that way. The final one is consulting. So this is something that I've also done with a lot of companies, language policy consulting, putting together their language policies globally. So how do they use the English language globally? How do the communication channels work? Who is responsible for what kind of communication? And once you've been in the business world long enough working with these clients, it's something you can partner with them to create and help them in this way. Style and content guides as well, like an email style guide. So what kinds of greetings and signatures should they be using? How should they sign off? What kind of language should they be using? Is it okay to say, please find attached the following blah, blah, blah? Or do you tell them, no, we want to replace that with, I have attached the file you asked for. Okay, so looking into phrasing and there's all kinds of stuff that you could be doing that you could use your English teaching background to help with. And I am very noticing the time here. Marketing, incredibly important. But if you don't know your niche, if you don't know how to sell yourself, you don't know your unique selling point, it's really hard to do the marketing well because you're just throwing yourself out there in the world and saying, anybody who wants to work with me, just come and work with me. And that's not going to get the job done. You want your marketing to also be targeted and focused on those ideal clients. And this is what I call the marketing pie. So we have all these different areas where you should be trying to market yourself. You should be going out there networking, meeting these people, your ideal clients, whether those are parents or whether those are top executives. You need to be in the right groups to meet your ideal client and network with them. Speaking, the number one way to get clients. When they see you speak, when they hear you teach and know what you're able to do and provide, it's the easiest way to get hired, okay? Because they know and trust you. Social media, of course, but again, you want to be targeted with your social media. You could spend all day long on social media, sending out messages about all different things. You want to be very targeted on your market. If you're looking at corporate professionals, then what are you doing playing on Instagram and Facebook? You should be on LinkedIn. Of course, for you in Russia, no, you don't have LinkedIn. But whatever it is that business owners online are using, you want to be there, okay? And maybe that is in Russia. Maybe it is Facebook since you don't have the LinkedIn access. So it just kind of depends on where you can find your client. You need a sales force, and this could be your past clients, it could be colleagues, it could be friends and family, but people who are out there talking about you. People like my friend Shirley, who passed me a client that we were able to collaborate. And I also actually give her 10% as well. That's also quite normal to give referral fees with your colleagues and other teachers that you collaborate with. Industry associations. So again, if you're the automotive teacher, get in those automotive associations. Summits and conferences. These are a way that we can collaborate a little bit like what we're doing now, right? This is an online conference where I'm able to speak and share knowledge, and you can also interact and learn about each other as well. So summits and conferences online or in real life, great. Content creation, getting your articles out there. We talked about that a bit, doing a lot of writing articles online, getting into paper magazines, all of these things. Get your name out there and market you. And then a free offer. Free offer is super important because you want to immediately start building a database. I know that many of you might say, oh, I hate that, but you have to have some way of connecting with your ideal clients. If you have a free offer on your website, which I'll give you an example at the end because I have one for all of you, you're able to go to my website, you can download the Language Business Quick Start Guide, and by doing so, you're going to put in your email, you're going to put in your name, and in trade, you get my 20-page long report going into details about all the stuff we're talking about today and more. Now, I think that's a pretty fair trade. Now, what that's going to mean is that next time I'm running my boot camp or next time I have a program that you might be interested in, you're going to receive some information on that over email. That's what's going to happen. Now, you could just as easily download the free report and then click unsubscribe on the next email you get, and you're done. It doesn't matter. That's all part of the game. I don't care, right? I'm not going to have my feelings hurt because you unsubscribe. But by offering you some free content that lets you get to know me, what I stand for, you learn how direct I am. You learn how, I'm not a good fit for everybody. So by giving you free content, it's helping you because it's giving you some really good knowledge. It's also helping me because you're going to self-select. You'll say, wow, I really like her. I want to work with her. Or you'll say, oh my God, I can't stand her. This is not the person for me. I'm finding someone else. And great, either way, great, because I don't want people who aren't a good match for me working with me. I don't want people coming into my group programs and then not participating and not being a part of it or working against what I'm trying to do. No, I want people who resonate with me, who trust me, who like me, and like my style. And that's what you want for you and your business as well. You want to make sure you're still attracting the ideal client. Final, step number 8, and then we are completely open for questions. Collaboration. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. This is one of the worst things I see in the teacher industry. I see teachers who are ultra competitive, that are so scared that they aren't going to make that $10 an hour, that they're totally cutthroat. They won't share anything with other teachers. They won't collaborate with other teachers. They really keep to themselves. And that isn't good for anybody. If you want to grow your business, you need to collaborate. You need to get colleagues who you're referring work to. If you create your niche, then you basically erase the competition. Even other people who are teaching pronunciation, I don't even think of them as my competition because I am so niche. I know exactly, I work with this person to achieve this so that they can do this. And those are the only people I work with. Anybody else, I pass on. If they're sitting in America and want an American accent, guess what? I know a pronunciation teacher in America who will be happy to do that. That's not what I do. So when you have your niche and you know it, you don't need to compete anymore. You can collaborate. I can collaborate with all these other pronunciation teachers because I know that when that person comes who wants an American accent, great. I know a specialist who loves to teach people how to speak like an American and sound native. That is completely against everything I stand for. I don't want to have anything to do with it. But this girl, she's really good at it. So if that's what you want, great. I'll send you to her. And she's going to send me 10% of that client's fee. So this is how we can work together. We can learn so much from each other. We can work together, we can learn from each other, we can share clients, we can share information. We can do global summits where we interview each other. We can interview each other for articles that we write. We can boost each other up instead of constantly trying to compete on price and get, oh, there's only so many, we don't have enough clients, we don't have enough money. You guys, there are 2 billion non-native speakers in the world who want to improve their English skills. 2 billion. We have so many potential clients in the world. None of us could ever be without work. Okay, it's a matter of how you put yourself out there and who you're selling to and how you're doing it. Okay, keep that in mind. We are not competitors. We should be collaborating a lot more, a lot more. So moving forward, there are a lot of skills you're going to need to develop. I hope that these slides will be made available to you because really it's just some information here. I don't really need to go through it one by one, but you really need to start thinking about increasing your business knowledge if you don't have a business background and you want to target business clients. Even if you aren't targeting business, even if you're Victoria who's targeting children, you need to know something about business. You need to know how to run a business. You need to be savvy. You need to know how the numbers work. You need to know the difference between, your just basic turnover versus your profit margin. How can you make sure you're making the most profit by reducing how much you're spending on each one of these clients through marketing, through materials, through whatever. You need to know your business speak. You need to know sales and marketing. You need to also have fantastic teaching skills. And you need to know the difference between teaching and training and coaching and consulting. And you need to know a bit about technology as well. There's more. You need to know about personal branding, getting that niche focused. You need to know, again, sales and marketing. This is online, the copywriting, social media, content development, websites, blogs, video, podcast, apps, live streaming, membership sites. You don't need to know it all because by doing it all, you're going to achieve nothing. You need to be focused on what's going to be best for you and for your client. And then finally, extreme productivity. How are you going to manage your time? How do you use calendar tools so that people can book themselves? How do you cut down on email ping pong? How do you keep yourself off of social media and screwing around with stuff you shouldn't be doing? How do you stay focused and motivated on your business? Okay, so just to tie it up, you guys, some resources for you. I hope all of you on Facebook will find the English Teacher Business Network. It's a group. Go on there, request to join, I'll approve you. Right now we have almost 600 members in that group and it's all about business. It's talking about how to build your business. And if you have questions, you can post them there and you'll get feedback from other teachers. And this is one way that I'm trying to get us to collaborate more. And other than that, like I said, the Language Business Quick Start Guide, you can go to my website, globalspeechacademy.com, go to 4 teachers, download it. Or you can go to this 6-figure English teacher site, whatever. But you'll find it just on my website under 4 teachers. Download it, 20 pages going through what I talked about today and a lot more. And then if that resonates with you, if you think we're a good fit, I'll be starting my 6-week business boot camp in September. It's because I'm in the middle of moving back to Singapore. So once I'm back in Singapore and reestablished, we'll start up again in September with the business boot camp. And you can find more on that at the website shown there. Okay, so now, okay, slides are available. We have just a few minutes. I'm sorry to have to cut it short on questions, but I didn't see any questions coming up during. But do any of you have any additional questions? I know it was a lot to take in, a lot of information, and possibly information that's made you feel really, really uncomfortable. And if it has made you uncomfortable, then I probably did a really good job because I want to open your eyes up to some different options and opportunities. They may be for you, they may be not for you. But it's a different direction that you can go and you can consider. Thank you, you guys. You're very, very welcome. You're very, very welcome. I'm so happy to share it. I was so happy when Evgeny asked me to come on, and especially that he wanted me to talk about the business stuff because I said, "Are you thinking pronunciation or business?" And he goes, "No, the business stuff." And I said, "Oh, great, great, great." I love talking about it. I know that there's a whole world out there that teachers aren't aware of, and I know that a lot of it is just mindset, and I know that all of you can overcome kind of the teacher mentality to move into being very savvy business people. But we've just never had that teaching, and now I've spent 10 years surrounding myself with not teachers. I was actually never a part of the teacher associations because I just wasn't really aware of them in Asia. IATEFL was too far away, TESOL's too far away, and I wasn't involved. And I didn't think of myself as a teacher. I thought of myself as a business trainer and consultant. So I hung out with consultants, management consultants, trainers, and by having that group of friends, it's amazing. The law of association, you guys. If you're only associating with other English teachers who are all charging $10 an hour, then sure, you think you're crazy if you were to go to a client and charge $100 an hour. Well, guess what? When all of my friends were consultants earning 200, 300, 400, 500. Some consultants I know earning $1,000 an hour. Personal friends of mine earning $1,000 an hour. Guess what? Charging $100 made me feel like a total loser. Okay, so I knew I had to go in there and charge at least a few $100s, because how was I going to compete? You know, these were my friends. They lifted me up. So make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who lift you up. That's why I made the English Teacher Business Network on Facebook as well. Okay, so surround yourself with people who are doing and achieving what you want to do and achieve, and who make it seem normal, who say, oh yeah, I just signed another client. Yeah, it's going to be about $10,000 for the program. That's normal. In my world, that's normal. An $8,000 one-on-one coaching client, totally normal. That's compared to my executive coaching friend whose minimum course is $25,000 a client. So my 8,000 is like nothing, right? But I don't have the guts to go and charge 25, but I have the guts to charge 8. But if I was only hanging out with English teachers, I wouldn't have the guts to charge $500. Okay? So start changing the world you're in, start changing where you're getting your information, start associating with people who are doing what you want to do. Because I know it's possible. I've done it. I know all of my friends have done it. And the people I'm now teaching and coaching are now doing it. So it is very possible. And I'm so happy to hear that you feel motivated and inspired, because that's more than anything what I would like for you, even if it also has made you feel very uncomfortable and pushed you out of a comfort zone. Because it will be very uncomfortable. All growth and all change is extremely uncomfortable. But if you're willing to take the risk and make that big step, it can be very lucrative, and you can become very, very successful as well. So thank you very much, all of you, for having me. Thank you, Evgeny, for inviting me, and Trendy English for having me on this series. I think it's been fantastic, and I hope you all enjoyed it.